This meeting has come to order. We have 6 board members here. Can I get an adoption of a vote on the adoption of the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Let's vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Well, I wanted to just take a few moments to talk about the purpose of our meeting today. Everyone knows that Advanced Ed is the accreditation agency that will be coming to visit MPS during the 18-19 school year. And so that the board and the intervention team may better appreciate issues of specific concern in connection with the upcoming accreditation process, Advanced Ed President, Dr. Mark Elgard, will update everyone on the district status today. So we appreciate Dr. Elgard, you coming to be with us. Just a few people, I know you have some individuals with you will recognize, and I also wanted to recognize our interim state superintendent, Dr. Richardson, for being here with us as well. So Dr. Elgard, I'm going to turn it over to you now for your presentation.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to meet all of you, and looking forward to an informal engagement. I want to be able to share some things to inform you as to what will transpire and give you an opportunity to ask some questions. But before I do, I'd like to introduce a couple of my staff members. Dr. Jeff Wooden is the Regional Vice President for the southeastern part of the United States, and he resides here in Alabama as former superintendent of Muscle Shoals, Alabama. And Dr. Andre Harrison is our director here in Alabama. And Dr. Harrison is well known throughout the state. Both of them provide great leadership for us. I serve as the president and CEO of Advanced Ed. Advanced Ed is the parent company of an organization that you're probably more familiar with, which is the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, or SACS. And SACS and 2 other regional accrediting agencies formed Advanced Ed back in 2006. My work with Advanced Ed actually began as an employee of SACS, and I've been doing this work since 1994. In fact, somebody asked me if I'd ever been to Montgomery. Montgomery was actually the site of my very first SACS assignment back in February of 1994 when I came to Montgomery for a state committee meeting and was introduced to the state committee there. And one of the state committee members, a man by the name of Lucky Crocker. And Lucky asked me, he said, "Son, what year were you born?" And I said, 1959. He said, "Well, I began this work in 1958, and I got a lot to share with you." So I've been enjoying the state of Alabama, and I've come to know it as a wonderful state to travel in and to work in and to live in. But I want to share with you a little context so you'll understand our work and what we bring to the matter here in Montgomery. We're a nonprofit organization. We work with 36,000 institutions, public and private, in 70 countries, and we're headquartered just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. We serve all types of educational institutions, from school systems and schools in the public arena to government agencies, higher ed institutions. We work with every type of delivery system you can imagine in education. It provides us great experience and expertise, and I will tell you quite honestly, there isn't anything we haven't come across, including the challenges you're facing here in Montgomery. And with a high degree of confidence, I believe those challenges can be met in the best interest of children in Montgomery Public Schools. It is up to the leadership here in Montgomery County in making the decisions and taking the actions necessary to ensure it. But there are no hurdles that you cannot overcome in order to do that. We've seen far more challenging situations be addressed adequately and effectively in other schools and systems in this country and outside this country. We provide services beyond accreditation. We provide an improvement network where we work with schools and systems that are not accredited, but they need help with improvement. We work with some of the low-performing schools across this country where state agencies will bring us in to help those schools make the necessary improvements. We provide STEM certification, which is for schools that are committed to a STEM curriculum. We also provide professional services. But the focus today is on your accreditation and the process that you're in within that accreditation protocol. So the current status, you are under our systems accreditation model, which means everything under the governance of this system is accredited by Advanced Ed and SACS. You were due for a review, an evaluation this year, but because of the state intervention, that was delayed another year. We've seen state interventions in other states. Sometimes it's short term, sometimes it's as short as 90 days. Sometimes it's a longer engagement. It can last several years. I remember Chelsea Public Schools was the first one in the country back in the 1980s, and they were taken over. That lasted over a decade. What we first want to do is determine whether or not the state intervention is a short term or it is somewhat lengthier. Once we determined that it was lengthier, it required a substantive change, where we right now need to determine what are the challenges related to accreditation that are affecting Montgomery Public Schools, County Public Schools, that led to the state intervention. We are not a state agency. We are independent of the state agency. Our evaluation of the district is independent of the state agency. However, the state agency's action raises questions as to the health and effectiveness of the school system. When we come in, we're not coming in as agents of the state to prove their case. We're coming in to help you identify what must you do in your roles as governing leaders of this district, as well as the principals and teachers on the ground to help this system move forward. In that evaluation process, you're going to learn things that you are doing well, that you need to continue to preserve and leverage. You're also going to learn about things that you need to do better at. And I'll be honest, the first time you hear that, nobody likes to hear where they're not doing well. Nobody likes to hear where they need to improve. And it's usually a hard message to accept. But when we evaluate you as a system, we're evaluating the entire system. We're not evaluating individual board members. We're not evaluating the superintendent, interim superintendent. We're not evaluating a particular principal or teacher. We're looking at the health of the system and in schools. And our direction we're providing you is a direction for the entire system to move forward. So when you receive that report, it is critically important that you take an honest look at it as a governing body, not as a group of individuals. So we have sent you a notice that we're conducting a special review. I believe the dates are March 19th through 21. So in about 6 weeks. That review is going to be conducted by highly trained representatives of Advanced Ed for this type of review. It is going to look at the triggering event, which was the state intervention in the areas in which the state identified concern. For instance, we understand I'm providing a short list here, but the basis for state intervention was student achievement, fiscal performance, and governing effectiveness. That's the state's, that's not our determination, that's what the state believed. But it did lead to a state intervention. Our focus is going to be, why are you struggling with improving student achievement? What is causing, if there are fiscal performance issues, what's causing it? What do you need to do to move forward to address it? If there is effectiveness of the governing board in leading the system, what are the issues that you must grapple with as a board, not as individuals on the board, but as a board to improve the governance of the system? You set a tone, set a direction, establish expectations at this level. Yes, you're not in the classrooms, but you do a lot to set the tone. You establish how people will come to work every day, how the community will look at the schools, and what they can expect of the schools. you play a critical role. We have standards in 3 areas. When we evaluate a system, we look at your capacity to improve learning, to support learning, to grow learning. We look at your capacity to use your resources wisely, to allocate them in accordance with the needs of the students in this system. We look at the allocation of resources, how much are directed to the classroom? Are they directed in a way that's equitable? Are those resources being used wisely by teachers and principals to improve instruction and create and sustain opportunities for kids to learn? We look at the manner in which you make those decisions in establishing your budgets. Are they in accordance with some analysis of data about the needs of your system and the needs of your students? We also look at your capacity to provide leadership. And leadership is not a singular one. We're not just looking at the superintendent of the board. We're looking at leadership throughout the system. When a teacher steps before a classroom of students, they're a leader. When a superintendent addresses the community, she or he is the leader of the system. And when you gather as a board in this type of setting, you are the leaders of the system. You look at your capacity to lead this system forward. To give you an example, it may be hard to read, and you have it in your handout. One of the issues that we understand, like I said, it's what we understand through other parties, not what we've determined yet. We must make our own determination independent of that. That there is a struggle with improving student achievement and the ability to use data to demonstrate improvement of student learning. We have a standard here, and there are some elements of it, and the elements look at, is there evidence that the system and its schools are improving student learning? It's one of the questions we're going to come here to find out. Is there evidence that you're actually improving student learning? If you are not across the system, where are the gaps? Where are the issues? What's behind those issues? We're going to determine, is the focus on all groups of learners? We see in large systems, there are pockets of some great schools and great teachers. But is there a focus across the entire system? Are there schools repeatedly underperforming and struggling, whereas other schools are performing at or above expected levels? How are you as a system dealing with that disparity? How are you ensuring that your resources are meeting the needs across the system? Is instruction being modified to enable learner success? When we go in and we look at a classroom, we're looking at the environment upon which learning happens. Is instruction being modified to help every child find their success? There's some related standards to this type of standard. How are resources being allocated to support learning, the improvement of learning? Are all kids having an equal opportunity? For instance, maybe in certain parts of the county, some programs are offered, in other parts of the county, they're not offered. Why is there a difference? What's led to that difference? If I'm in a school that doesn't offer music, art, and phys ed, but just go to another part of the county and those same programs for elementary are offered, why is there a difference there? What's the difference? And we're going to look at another standard relates to effective governing and leadership. Like I said earlier, you establish a tone, you set a tone. Your leadership that you carry out in an engagement at this level has a pervasive effect through the entire system. I don't know what the results of the special review will be. I'm not going to be on that review. I've done those reviews in the past. What I'm hoping today is you have some opportunity to understand the purpose of that so that when it does happen and the special review team comes in here and they want to engage you in a discussion, they'll meet with you. Usually they meet with you either one-on-one or in smaller groups. It might be paired up depending on the schedule. You have the opportunity to share your perspective. The more honest and open you can be in that engagement, the better we can do our job to evaluate and give you direction on where you need to be. It is an absolutely critical opportunity for you to embrace this process so that you can receive back something of benefit. The educators coming here come from a wide range of experiences. They are well trained to do this type of review. And they've been in systems a lot more difficult, a lot larger, a lot smaller. This type of setting is not going to be unknown to them. And that's a help. They're not going to spend their time trying to figure out What does it mean to be in a city school system with a variety of challenges that it has? So it is my hope that you embrace that process in your own effort to improve. This is not where we're coming in here trying to play gotcha. We're coming in here trying to give you direction to improve. It's a success if you improve. And the reason why you're engaged with an organization like ours is for improvement. That's the primary reason. Improvement of everything you do, so that ultimately children win, children succeed. So the focus coming in, and then I'm going to open it up for us to have a conversation and any questions. The focus is what must be done to enable this system in the schools to improve student learning. And with the special review so close to your full review, which is next year, we'll get at that over a period of time. You'll get some direction through the special review, you'll get further direction with the full review next year. Helping the system and the community. And the community is an important role, has an important role to play. To understand, and I underscore this, you do have strengths. If you cannot figure out what your strengths are, you're going to struggle to figure out where you need to improve. And those, acknowledging and understanding where those strengths are critically important. And then our focus is to guide you through this improvement effort. We're here to help you through this process, to work with your staff, with you, and with your community. And with the state's intervention, our ultimate goal is to help you return the leadership to local communities, improve the quality of your system, so that kids who are coming to these school systems receive the best education possible within the resources and availability of talent that you have. So I want to open it up to any questions, comments. I really want you this afternoon, I know we have a brief period of time, to be able to understand this process and why we're together today.
Well, I appreciate y'all, your coming in. I think it's real important that we get a fair and balanced and a non-political look at sides. Look or snapshot of the system, good, bad, or indifferent. Because I can't speak for everyone, but I think I speak for most, that that's what we want to do, is move the system forward and do what's in the best interest of the children. And so I'm looking forward to the interview and telling you all what I think.
The one thing that I like about what you said through all of this is that you're not here to make a case for the state. That's number one. That was the one thing that jumped out at me. And also through your talk, you were talking, I felt that you were trying to get us to the place where teachers could teach and students could learn. And although we always hear the downside about our system, but just to hear something positive, we do have some strengths in the system. And for you to acknowledge that, and those things that we don't have the strength in, you're willing to show us. You know, it's easy to criticize, but it seems that you're at a point where you're going to say, well, here we are. This is where we get to where we want to be. And if nothing else came out of your presentation, that's what I feel at this point.
And just to, then I'll go here, just a quick comment to both your comments. It comes with a commitment from both sides.
Right.
And a commitment an honest commitment from all of you that you will take the action to improve. I understand the political nature of your relationship with the state, but I will confidently and respectfully tell you that the state, as well as you, want the same thing. They want the system to improve. You may have debate, and you may have debate among yourselves as to what it will take to improve. But we work with the state, and although we're not an agent of the state, they want the same thing you want. And the more we can move politics out of the conversation and move kids into the conversation, I believe adults have a better chance of making the right decisions. Because I believe you're unified in your motivation. Everybody wants Montgomery county public schools to improve. Everybody, without exception.
One of the things that was important to me was like Mr. Dean and Ms. Breyer said, we asked for help. We agreed that we needed help. But until you started your conversation today, no one has offered any suggestions for how to get the help or which direction we needed to go. Hearing what you're saying means that there is a chance for us to improve. And I know we can. Mrs. Breyer said, we've got good areas within the district. We've got some very, very poor ones as well. We know that. Some of those challenges are bigger than we are. And we have to find a way to work through all of that in order to help our kids get to where we want our kids. Not the state, not the city, not the county, but where we want our kids to be.
Well, I can certainly appreciate you coming in, because first and foremost, you stated that in March 19th through the 21st, that you guys will be coming in and you're doing a review. In other words, you're doing the initial assessment. And then as a result of your initial assessment, you will have some findings. With those findings, those are the things that we would need to address.
Correct.
Upon your coming in and certainly looking at some things that we are faced with, are you going to make sure that the assessment tools that we're using are not flawed, as well as those assessment tools that are being used are aligned to the standards and objectives that students will be taking on tests when they're given some kind of evaluation? Because in the past that has not been the case. But certainly we hope that we can get some level of alignment whereby what's being done in that classroom is what children are being assessed on. And certainly we appreciate your coming in, and as Ms. Dawkins has stated, for a while now, we have been moving like a ship without a sail. So certainly when you come in and identify areas of concern, then I think we all as a board would love to know the direction that we're heading, those things that we need to address, so we can fulfill the needs of the students of this district.
So on the assessment question, the assessments which are under your control, most certainly, the complicating matter in public education is when there's federal and state control over certain assessments. You can't change those, we can't change those, but assessments that you have total control over, whether interim assessments or formative, where there's local decision-making, absolutely, we'll look to see, are those assessments that you have under your own control aligned? But the ones that the federal government and the state approve, no, because you don't have control over that. We could put you, see, the problem here is, when we come out with a finding, and just so that you'll understand, we're coming out with a finding, you must address that finding. What happens if you don't address the finding? So what usually happens is we'll come out with our review. We will come back every 3 to 6 months to continue to monitor your progress in addressing those findings. Well, let's go the direction where you don't address the findings. You're unable to address the findings. And our findings must be things that are under your control. Because we can't hold you accountable for something you can't control. But what is at risk? What's at risk ultimately is accreditation. And if you lose your accreditation, that is a situation all of us want to avoid. Because the consequences for that, there are consequences from at the system level, the community-based consequences, but ultimately, kids pay the biggest consequence. From getting into college, being eligible for scholarship, there's a lot of consequences there we want to avoid. So part of our coming in now is to preempt it getting so far down the road that you can't reverse it. And we still believe you're at a stage now where with these findings, you can address them, you can move forward. You're not so far down that road that your only thing that's gonna happen, you're gonna lose accreditation. We've seen that happen in the past where the intervention started too late. This intervention's at a stage now where our findings, under your control, we can work together. We'll be back here. We're not just gonna come in and then disappear for 5 years. We're gonna be here as long as you are engaged in this process, committed to it, and addressing those findings until you completed them. And when we come back in 6 months, we'll say, okay, you'll provide us evidence of what you've done, and we'll say, okay, based on this, here's the next thing you can do. It's iterative. You're not gonna go from this point to this point. You're gonna gradually work your way through, because every period of this, you wanna be able to sustain, keep it going. And when you try to leap too high, and you fall short, okay, it's steps.
Okay, so that.
She's waiting, and then I'll go to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't mean any disrespect to the board or anything like that, but I wanna point out that we can make excuses all day long that the ACT didn't align or the assessments. But when we have a average of an ACT of 14, and the state average is 18, was 20, and we are trying to move, you have to understand the reliability coefficient of the ACT is 0.90 and sometimes above. So a child, what that is in layman's terms, if the child makes a 16 the first time he takes it, because of that high reliability score of a 0.90, you're only gonna go up to, down to, or stay the same. So we can't blame that on assessments, because it's not assessments. We have the ability and know right now what some of the problem is. What our board, I believe, in my opinion, needs is we need to know how to make those tough decisions. It can't be decisions to get along. It can't be political, and it's not political. To some it is. It has to be, let's look at the real problem. Let's look, and I've said it, and my preacher said, I told my preacher today, I'm gonna sit back and shut up, and he said, Lexi, that's just really impossible for you. And it probably is, and it may cost me, my position, but what I'm saying is, whoever's sitting in my seat or anybody else's seat, they've got to make the tough decisions that have not been made, or we would not be in the intervention that we're in now.
I'll come to you right after. I understand what you're saying, and one of the things that, and this state is, quite frankly, I give them a lot of credit because they're engaged in discussions right now to look at an assessment system that would be more iterative or interim throughout the year, so that the results teachers can have in real time and so can kids, and that they can take action in real time. And they want to do it in an aligned way. If they're able to achieve that, and they're not the only state, but you've identified an issue that I can take you to every state, and I can take you to districts across this country, where the lack of real-time, reliable data in the classroom, where the teacher and the child and the parent have the ability to understand what needs to improve right then and there, not 6 months later, not when they've moved on to 4th grade, not 5th grade. If we're able to do this, and this is a national challenge, we're going to improve instruction. It's not that teachers aren't trying, teachers are trying, but when they're trying without the benefit of real evidence in which to try to help the kid improve. So you're in that direction. I understand what you're saying. There are decisions you can make locally to strengthen the availability of data and evidence to inform instruction. There are practices that good schools do to bring teachers together to talk about that data, to talk about every child, so that they're in professional learning communities where they go through the group of kids and say, how did she do yesterday on the reading formative assessment? Where were the weaknesses? What are you going to do? And it takes leadership at the teacher level, as a principal level. It is systemic. It's far beyond the deliberations of the board. Those are the types of things that take time to embed, but there are success stories, and you can do it.
And see what you said though, you said under standard elements, you said you had made the statement, is there evidence, okay? Well, when we have the evidence, when we have your scores, the next thing was we need to find out where the gaps are, okay? I think we can do that. We were going to set up committees. But what we're not, the next question you said was what's behind those issues? And when we find that out, that decision has to be made to do something about it, not sit back and let it ride.
That's right. It does. You're absolutely right.
Well, and with what she was just saying, I think what my question and comment was taking that not at the school level, but at our government level, So you'll be able to give us some goals and some kind of dipstick tests along the way, or best practices to show us how that we can.
We'll be able
With
to
government.
provide you some guidance there. We're also gonna look at how are you using your resources to support. Because if you want to introduce new interventions or new strategies or structures in schools and in classrooms, you're gonna have to make an investment, which means making decisions on where your resources are spent now to where they will be. There will need to be some shifting. And like I said, I haven't made this determination, but, you know, one of the questions is there an equitable proportion of the resources distributed to classrooms? In other words, there is a question that there's too many of the resources are being held in an administrative function, not helping teachers and kids learn in the classroom. That's a question that's out there. We haven't made a determination, but it is a question being raised. Are you using your resources to benefit teachers and kids in the learning process?
Well, that was one of the words that really stuck out to me, was the equitability, because what Lisa was describing, I mean, I know there are schools in my districts where they are data driven. And I mean, those are the schools that are performing well, but we've got to do a better job of the accountability of why are you, school X, not doing what.
And so the first question is, why are the schools that are doing well, why are they doing well? What is their behaviors?
Right, and why can't we just,
Not hammer at the one that's not. What are the behaviors that are transferable to other schools?
right,
And, you know, there's some bold decisions that can be made. Sometimes it is developing leadership. Sometimes your best principals are not located in your areas of greatest need. Sometimes your best teachers are not where they need to be.
equitability.
Yes. So there's going to be some challenging decisions that you'll have to make as a board. And it's those decisions that can transform the district if you make them in the best interest of all the kids.
Okay, I was just gonna comment that, when you use the standard 2.11 as an example, and you talked about analyzing and using formative data. And so what I get out of that partially is that as part of this review, the responsibility of actually sharing information and bringing that information together is something that we as a district have to pull together in order to deal with advanced aid in this case.
Yes.
And so then my question is though, in this special review, are you going to, or will you be able to at this point even give us some semblance of an example of the kinds of things you will be looking for in the special review?
So I'm going to go back to here. One of the things the special review team, what I anticipate is they're going to, let's say for instance, they might find, I'm just random, they find 20 areas of great need. They're going to prioritize those. They're not going to probably at first tell you all 20. They're probably going to say, in order for you to get to 15 through 20, they first got to handle 1 through 5. Because it doesn't matter. If they don't handle 1 through 5, so you may at first, and it goes to your question, you may not at first see that, and your question really hammered away at, is the relationship here, and is it aligned? Is it reinforcing? They may see that that's a real issue, but they're going to say, why is it, what are they lacking before they can even get to that issue? And that's one of the things they bring, the expertise and experience. They're going to layer this so that you ultimately get to all of these pieces. So that's why it's meant by an iterative process. And with a full review down the road, that's going to work to your favor because it's going to go deeper. What they're going to come out in the first findings is the most critical first steps because they don't want to overwhelm you. And then you start going at things in a order that's going to make you unsuccessful. Because I would guarantee you, at least based on my near 40 years in education, there are layers behind this, layers in front of this that you must first get to. It's like peeling an onion, okay? Don't go for the center right away. But ultimately, the center is the kids, and we're going to get there. And how you embrace this process and the way that you engage it will set the tone of a culture of improvement. And if I were to, one thing for you to remember today is can you make a commitment as a governing body to create a culture of continuous improvement? Which means you're going to embrace, yes, we need and will improve as a system. And we're going to engage in this journey. We're not going to try to argue our way out of it. We're going to say, we're committed to this process, continuous improvement. We're going to work over time to improve this system so that all kids and future generations of kids benefit. That's ultimately what I'm asking you to do as a accredited system, to make a commitment to continuous improvement. It's a journey that is unique to you. Every system, every school has their own unique journey. But there's nothing in your journey that we haven't seen other schools or systems overcome. And that's what we can bring to you to help inform you and guide you, that expertise, where we've seen other systems. And you already mentioned, in some cases, you already have the success in your own system. You just haven't been able to scale it and duplicate it. And there's reasons behind that. And a lot of it is leadership and use of resources.
And knowing how to use that data. I
Yes.
think that's a big problem.
And it is. And it's, but patience and perseverance are critical attributes here. Sustainable improvement does not happen overnight. I get suspicious if a school district all of a sudden jumps their scores in 1 year. To me, that's more a change in kids than a change in practice. But when a school district year in and year out improves, 3, 4, 5 years, every year there's improvement, then you can start, that's a system that's putting the legwork in to really sustain improvement over time, no matter how the kids change. But when it happens overnight, it's just a different class of kids. That's all you saw, the change.
Well, my statement, well, I actually have a comment, and forgive me for reading, I just didn't want to forget it. But I do know from working with this board, each of us are definitely committed to the student achievement piece, because that's what we want. Like you said, we want to leave something that's going to last. I know that we are definitely committed to the mission, the vision, and the values of our district, and that means putting the resources, having good teachers, good principals in place, so that our students can receive the proper resources in totality to ensure that they are receiving equitable treatment throughout the district, and everybody's rising. Because as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats, all ships. So that's a commitment, I think, from just working with each of you. I know that we're ready to get serious about and take on. That's just my comment.
And I encourage you to look at other systems that are similar in demographic to you, and be willing to look beyond the state of Alabama. How do other systems build the capacity for leadership? Because leadership sets the stage for everything. There are systems who have their own leadership development programs, where they take, aspiring young educators who are really doing great in the classroom, who want to move into leadership roles, and they provide a whole structure for them to develop within. Because that type of leadership usually has a long-term commitment to the district, and to really leverage that. There are other districts who are, everybody struggles with, wanting more financial resources. But why do some districts optimize those resources, whereas other districts don't? And part of it is the way budgets are built. A lot of times budgets are built the way it's a traditional process. They make amendments each year. They don't build a budget and link it directly to your needs. And as your needs change, the budget changes. And so you'll see the most effective districts who align their budget process to meeting your most pressing needs, and making sure the funding and the resources are distributed equitably across the district. It's looking at, where do you want your people? Do you want your people in your Board of Education administrative building, or do you want your best people in your schools for the kids? And you have to look at that distribution. How do you distribute your talent? If you have a lot of bodies here and you're losing bodies in your schools, you have to ask yourself the question, wait a second, the kids aren't here, they're in my school. That's where I want my best resources. That's where my customers are. That's where my clients are. That's where my needs are. And that means making some tough decisions. I realize that shifts people around, but your primary concern should be every child in this district. and they don't come to this building to learn.
That's right.
Is there somebody that will teach, I mean, and maybe people on the board know how to do it, I don't. Is there somebody that will teach us how to go to the legislature and tell them the things that we need? Example, we are, you have so many laws, you know, like progressive discipline, the tenure laws, things that I think, you know, if I knew how to do it, I'd be headed to the legislature immediately, because there's so many things that we're up against. That example, okay? If we were to give a prognosis for the problem, if you have teachers that are not passing the praxis or had not already. Now, I realize the state board, and I heard today that the state board has actually raised the scores, which I'm gonna say amen to that, and they're gonna be given a report card to all the universities. I'm gonna say amen to that too. But how the teachers that are already there, that have not passed the praxis, that are in the classroom, that are teaching kids, obviously if the teacher didn't pass the praxis and it's actually their teacher, there's your problem. So what do we do about that?
So that, I mean, I understand your question. I think that's more a question of your state associations, either for superintendent or school board association, where they're advocating across the entire state. That's not my purpose of being here today, but I understand it. In every state, those state level organizations are your best asset to interact with the legislature to help change or pass laws and regulations that are best into school systems. You know, our conversation here today, and what I hope is, and I know you didn't intend it, is I believe you can move the system forward regardless of what the state does. And your state can't be part of your solutions. You have to, and that's why we're gonna focus on what you have under your control, what you can do today. Because if we're waiting for a state law to make sure you can be successful, that's not a good strategy. Okay, no disrespect to any state legislature. Our focus has always been to focus on helping you
Got the kids.
optimize what you can do within your control. Accept the realities. You know, it's like I listen to teachers complain about the homes kids come from. Stop complaining about the home. That's what those kids come from.
Right.
But when they're in your classroom, they're in your classroom. What can you do? And I, you know, as a young principal, when I became a young principal, and I went into experienced teachers, and I'd go through their grades, and I would ask them, you know, Sue got a D and Jimmy got an F. What are you going to do about it? And they look at me, what do you mean? What am I going to do about it? I mean, what are they going to do? They got to do something about it. Their parents got. No, I said, what are you going to do about it? You're their teacher. I don't go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't look at me and say, what are you going to do about the fact you just got the flu? I go to the doctor because the doctor can help me get healthy. So that's what it is under your control, and that's where we need to focus, to help you move the system forward, okay? And let governments at the state and national level, believe me, I have met with more legislators, at the federal and state level, more governors and secretaries than I care to admit. That's a different process, and that's a long-term one that can take years to advocate through. So we can focus now and improve the system.
So what do we have after the March 19th or 21st review? Do we come back and listen as a board to what your review is? And
There'll be a written report,
okay.
and you'll receive that probably within 30 to 45 days of the review. At that time, either myself or somebody else from the staff could come back. It could also be the lead evaluator from the review, where you can ask more probing questions about the content of that review so you can understand it. But we will, at your request, we will come back and discuss that report at length with you.
So not only discuss it, but help
Yes.
perhaps, give us some strategy.
Yeah, there'll be direction within that.
Okay.
And that will not force you have the authority to implement the strategies you believe will best work. We will give you direction and ideas, but, so we'll stop short of saying like, for
You're
instance,
not going to tell us. but
yeah,
you'll make suggestions.
an instructional program is Bob Marzano's work. Great program, right? We won't come in here and tell you, you must use that program, but we will tell you, you must increase the instructional capability of your teaching staff, especially in the areas of reading And there's no, let's say, there's no system-wide reading program, teachers are lacking direction. We'll give you some ideas, but ultimately you must pick the strategy that you believe in to implement across the system. Our evaluation might say, you need a system-wide approach to improving reading. Everybody doing their own thing isn't working. Okay? And I don't even know if that's true.
It's true.
Okay.
Never mind now. You're gonna do the review in March the 19th through 21st. And it's my understanding, as a result of your findings, will be presented to us within 30 to 45 days afterwards. Well, what I'm looking at then, that would be toward the end of the year. Then, are we saying then those things that we would have been identified, then it would be the next year before we can start actually working on those things, wouldn't it? In order to make it,
There might be
according to what
something.
it is.
Yeah.
In other words, some of those things we might be able to address over the summer, and those others, then we begin in the fall. But the question is, what point in time in, my understanding, every 6 months you'll be back?
Yeah, they will identify, what the team will do is they'll look at the findings and say, what amount of time should it take for us to come back and have a substantive dialogue with them where they can provide some evidence of meetings. And, it's been as short as 3 months in certain situations, which I'm not, so far not reading that that's true here, but it could be, it won't be usually more than 6 months. So in 6 months, we'll come back. Like I said, remember, sir, we're gonna layer this. So what can you begin to address in these 6 months, from April to, let's say, the end of October? And it will be identified in a way to set that expectation. And then when they come in October, they'll say, okay, there were 6 findings, 2 of them been addressed, 4 you started, and here's some additional things you have to do. Between that October and the following April, we'll expect you to address those items. And we keep with you through this entire process.
And then how much time after which, then, we're saying that we'll have come up with a review?
Full review. What
Full review.
they'll probably do is at the point in time they believe that you're in the best position to engage that full review. Because our goal here isn't loss of accreditation, our goal here is fully
To help.
restored.
To help.
Yeah. So we will line that up at the right time.
Okay.
All right? And I can't predict right now what that
Okay,
will
I
be.
understand.
And then also, when you address and we deal with the findings, then we say this is our remedy for this, and then there's an implementation piece that has to be done over time so that we have the sustainability there.
Right. So we'll look for evidence of the determination you made. In other words, why did you decide to do X? And we'll look for and we'll understand it's the beginning stages of implementation. And by us coming back every 6 months, we'll be able to see how that implementation matures. And we really are gonna look for the maturation.
And really, that reading program is a great example, because that is something that we need to do. And it does align with what you're saying, fiscally, we've got to figure out how we can have this required reading curriculum. And so we would need to fiscally figure out how to do that and then adopt one. And then hopefully by the fall, we will have a reading program to start the school year.
So just an
But,
example.
I think what we have to do, I think what's gonna be in the best interest, is that when they come in and do their assessment, the initial assessment, you're going to identify those areas of concern. And immediately, those are the things that we need to get to work on.
Right.
Those things that you will address as a team, right? Okay.
And so just to feedback on both those comments, one of the effective practices in budgeting is aligning your budget to agreed upon priorities. And what we see effective boards do is first, before they even establish a budget, they're gonna say, what are our priorities next year? Okay, why are they a priority? Where's the evidence to support as a priority? And there's a lot of deliberations that go through that. You're not, you'll each have your ideas, but you'll go through a process and say, okay, these are our 4 top priorities for next year. Then that's communicated throughout the system. principals, teachers, everybody's building their budgets knowing these are gonna be priorities. Let's say one of them is reading, okay? Let's say a second one is building the capacity of our leaders, at the school level. And so you start to then make budgetary planning decisions that align with those. One of the realities of the system is you're losing enrollment. That's not a good place to be when you're trying to leverage resources to address needs. Because it's, in the business world, it's like declining revenues to meet increased needs, okay? If I were to steal a motto of another district, they want to become a destination district. In other words, what they want is they want parents to choose to live in the county to send their kids to the public school. There are a lot of public schools, especially with charter movements and other movements, and particularly in other states, because Alabama hasn't been there, where public schools see themselves much more actively as recruiting and retaining students. Because that's your customer, in the business world, that's your customer base. If you're losing customers, you're losing revenue, it's a losing business. And you should all be concerned with that. You want parents to want to have their kids in their schools.
Right.
So that ultimately, and when you retain and grow your school system, then you have the resources to address a lot of your needs.
Let me ask you, make sure I understand that, you understand that we can't get from here to here
Right.
overnight, that it's gonna be a process.
Mhm.
And as long as the system and the school board is implementing recommendations and making progress, the system will remain accredited.
Correct.
So there's not a definite line in the sand that if you're not here by this date, you lose accreditation. As long as we're continuing to approve, we will continue to be accredited.
You've said it clearly. We expect you to continue to make progress. And none of us in this room today know how long that journey is going to take. But if there's no journey you're engaged in, then we've got different conversations.
problem.
We've got a big problem.
Okay.
Okay? And I will say with all due respect, the sooner, there are more, let me back up. There are more politics in education than there are in politics.
Amen to that.
Okay? I mean,
Amen
we
to that.
can look to Washington DC, but real politics in this country are at the local level. Right?
You got that.
My mother, she was in your seat, Mr. Porter.
Oh, yeah?
Porterfield for 13 years in town. I went to school with my mother as chair of the school board. That was fun. I'll never forget, vice principal, when I did something I shouldn't have done in the last day of high school, my freshman year, and the vice principal looked me right in the eye and said, "I think something worse is waiting for you at home."
Yeah.
I don't think I need to do a thing. You have 30 minutes to get home.
Yeah.
Okay? But you have to find a pathway where you can minimize the politics. Because politics compromise kids.
Right, absolutely.
All right? Don't make this about the adults.
Right,
And I believe what I get a sense that you all care about the kids.
absolutely.
If you all care about the kids, there's nothing you can't achieve for the kids. But stay focused. If this is too much of an adult thing,
Yeah,
you're gonna struggle.
well, see, when you got the politicians have underlying objectives that tend to go out and smear rather than help, that's why we catch and have such a difficult time. Because rather than getting on board to try to support, then they're looking for other alternatives with some underlying objectives that they are working on.
I'm not gonna respond.
Because you know that.
But I am gonna respond to, what I sense is a strong commitment. Let's move forward with this process.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though I'm not gonna be directly involved, I will still be available to you in any way. As I said, my staff and our trained evaluators, they have the experience, knowledge, and expertise to help you. And in any way that I can, I will assist. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Looking forward to you coming back. Well, the discussion is over, so look at, well, we've had our discussion. At this time, we do have a meeting at 5 at Goodwin. We'll have our regular board meeting. I don't know if you all were introduced to new superintendent, Dr. Moore, but then we're welcoming her aboard. And we appreciate her coming in and serving as superintendent of Montgomery Public Schools. Let's give her a round of welcome, please. This meeting, would you like to say anything?
I would say I'm very happy to be here. Right now I'm in interim, and so, but I do plan to work from now until the end of May, when that is, ended. And, I've been through advanced ed before. I've worked with a lot of people in this room. I know them and they know me, and so we're gonna do the best that we can to put our best foot forward to meet the requirements that have been set forth, and, to lay the framework and the groundwork for our students to improve.
And more, this meeting is adjourned.